Welcome back. It's been a bit of a recurring theme here at the Listening Post, the difficulties of finding out the real casualty figures in Iraq. We're looking at that again this week because the U.S. military has declared that the number of casualties in October was down significantly. That story got a lot of play in some media outlets, but was all but ignored in others. So, are the media ignoring a piece of genuinely good news? Is the U.S. military just spinning the story and massaging the numbers to look good? Or, as the Listening Post's Sinead O'Shea asks in this report, are U.S. military leaders starting to feel like the boy who cried wolf, in that nobody believes them anymore?
There have been many extraordinary days throughout the Iraq War, but this last month there came an even more extraordinary one, a day in which nobody died, said the Australian newspaper in an article that initially appeared in the London Times under a different headline and which was reprinted in newspapers around the world. A red-letter day, surely, one keenly awaited by the world's press. So why did it get so little coverage?
This is a very provocative title. I don't think there has been so far a day where no one was killed in Iraq, or not a day where a body was not found in Iraq.
The difficulties start with who exactly is included in these casualty figures: coalition forces or Iraqi civilians.
I couldn't help but think that this might just be an attempt to start getting the public used to the idea that things are getting better in Iraq.
The Times rightly said that during a 5-day stretch between October 19th and 23rd, there were no deaths among coalition forces, the longest period without combat deaths for almost 4 years. Between October 27th and 29th, there were more days without coalition deaths. Obviously, these statistics did not relate to Iraqi citizens. The United States does not keep records of civilian casualties. But, according to the article, reported cases of Iraqi casualties were significantly reduced. On October 19th, no member of the coalition of Iraqi security forces died, although 12 civilians were killed. On October 30th, no Iraqi civilians were killed, but 3 US troops and 4 Iraqi policemen died. In summary, there was not a single day where there was an absence of both civilian and coalition casualties. It is difficult then to reconcile the headline of this article with its content.
We've certainly seen a drop-off in casualties, though I think we would never feel confident to say that we know that there was a day that no one was killed.
Mark Seibel has been collating daily information about Iraq war casualties on behalf of the US-based McClatchy newspaper group, using a number of sources, including police and hospital records, websites such as iCasualties.org, and the contributions of Iraqi journalists on the ground.
We believe that our numbers, while not reflective of total violence, meaning that they don't capture all incidents, that because they are consistently collected in the same way every day, that we believe any trend, whether it's an increase or a decrease in violence, is reflected in those numbers.
So why might there be a difference?
They're putting Iraqi security forces more at the front line. There is more of a focus, there's a lot of fighting concerning the sectarian violence in Iraq, which is removing attention away from occupation forces. A lot of the ethnic cleansing has already taken place. So there are many reasons why there could be a reduction in these casualty figures. That doesn't necessarily mean that the situation in Iraq is improving.
We don't really know the explanation. Our expectations and the expectations that had been promoted by American military officers had been that casualties would rise as the U.S. began more aggressive operations. And in fact, just the opposite occurred. And so we don't know if it's because somehow combat was successful and defeated insurgencies, or the insurgents decided to leave the field of battle and not confront the Americans, or perhaps the Americans have not really been conducting as aggressive a combat operation as they might have said.
Nevertheless, coverage of this apparent good news story was indeed scant. The news was reported in the US, the UK and Australia, but overall received relatively little airtime. So it begs the question, if there really is cause for optimism in Iraq, why was so little being said about it? And if there isn't, why were people reporting this?
You know, the old saying, once burned, twice cautious. The I think we've reported over the years, we as journalists, so often that either the insurgency was not a threat, or that combat operations had come to an end, or mission accomplished, or whatever it was, that now we're a little more hesitant to make those kinds of decisions.
I think we have to be very careful whenever we have or we hear official report, and always try to, compare them to what we hear from the reporters or the journalists reporting from Iraq.
And those journalists, most of whom are now Iraqi, are being killed in greater numbers than ever before.
They're dying because they're targeted, specifically targeted. The militiamen are waiting for them outside of their homes, outside of their house, and cold-bloodedly kill them without having second thoughts.
The media is simply unable to report much of the country, and that suits the coalition fine, because there's a lot of bad news that's not able to get out there.
The death of 6 US soldiers in Iraq this week has made 2007 the deadliest year of war for the US military personnel, with a total of 854 combatants losing their lives. This has been the headline for the news media. But last month, for whatever reasons, there was a reduction in US soldier casualties for the second month running. Such is the disillusionment with the way the war has so far been handled and presented, that this news has not received the coverage it might once have done. Of course, whether it may be of consequence over the coming months as the Hawks try to prepare us for new strategies in new places is another question entirely.
Our Global Village Voices now on Iraq and the numbers.
We all know numbers are relative. 38, 39 American soldiers killed in 1 month doesn't seem like much, but it is. It's not as much as it was before, but it's still a lot. The number of people haven't died. The media doesn't seem to distinguish that anymore, as they're also focused on the political elections and the campaign. So the war has kind of taken a backdrop. It's become more of a numbers game. And lost in all this, of course, is the fact that the number of Iraqi civilians, although that's quote-unquote dropped also, is still pretty high.
I don't think that the press is making, in general, any kind of effort to make the situation in Iraq better than it actually is. Yesterday's lead story in the Associated Press was that the number of U.S. soldiers killed in 2007 is larger than any other year. Of course, the military and the government are going to try and paint a different picture to drum up public support. But even if they have one strategy that's successful or one day in which there's killings, it's not going to have an impact on public opinion, because it's obvious at this point, several years into the war, that overall it was a total failure.
Finally, ever fancied your chances to be a drummer or a keyboard player in a band? Well, a clever filmmaker from Norway called Lasse Gjertsen has come up with a way to make that happen, even if you can't play an instrument. The only thing is, you have to be as skillful at editing video as he is. His movie is called Amateur Drummer. It's our Internet Video of the Week. We'll see you next time at The Listening Post.